Welcome back to Face the Nation. We turn now to Deval Patrick, former governor of Massachusetts, who before that led the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division during the Clinton administration. He joins us this morning from Richmond, Massachusetts. Governor, thanks for making time. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
So you're out of politics now. Your focus at the Kennedy School at Harvard is on leadership. How comfortable were you with President Biden's speech last week, and also a speech that Republicans well remember that the president gave earlier this year when he compared changes that Republicans made in voting laws in Georgia to Jim Crow and violent enforced segregation of another era? Are you comfortable with that kind of rhetoric?
You know what? A friend of mine says that we've been treating our democracy for a long time in this country as if it would tolerate limitless abuse without breaking. And when you add up the 19 states and their vote suppression laws recently, and you look at that alongside the amount of money, so much of it dark, which has been permitted into our politics and our policy making, the radical purging rules, the ways in which we have distorted the democratic process as a means to achieve better lives for citizens, it is deeply worrisome, and it's gotten worse because of election deniers. So I celebrate the president's speech. You know, any one of us would choose different words, but I think it is great that the president, first of all, calls things what they are, and also reminds us that the purpose of democracy is a means to assure liberty and justice for all. And we have to care about that process and that purpose for those reasons.
Governor, in our focus group that our audience will see in a few moments of Trump supporters, one pointed out that Democrats raised objections in 2000 and they wouldn't let them go. They raised objections in 2004. Some wouldn't let them go. And in 2016 raised objections and wouldn't let them go. And they consider Democrat criticism of Republican objections to what they saw in 2020 hypocritical. Respond to that.
Well, I think it's important for us to hear that, first of all, and to and really try to process that. I think I experienced that differently. I think when Donald Trump, if what you mean is objections to Donald Trump winning the presidency, I don't think there was any Democrat calling the election itself illegitimate because the outcome was surprising or disappointing to Democrats. I think it is important, though, to acknowledge that there is frustration that runs pretty deep throughout the political spectrum about democracy as a path to a better future. And that is because I think we've been treating it in these kind of careless ways for a long, long time. It's a whole other order of magnitude, and that is serious enough, but a whole other order of magnitude to say that democracy is illegitimate unless the outcome is the one you want or the one you voted for. I don't think that's what Democrats were objecting to in the policy choices of Donald Trump and those who have supported him. That's a very, very different thing.
Governor, as you well know, democracy is sustained on a generational basis. You deal a lot, I gather, with leadership and the question thereof with younger American students. What is their orientation to democracy? Do they want direct democracy? And do you have to explain to them we don't have direct democracy in our country? We have representational democracy. And do you work them through that? And what's their level of optimism or pessimism?
What great questions. First of all, I think the students at the Kennedy School, the young people I meet all around the country give me a tremendous amount of encouragement. And I think they should encourage all of us. I think their sense of patriotism runs deep. I think their sense of urgency is also natural and a thing not to be tamped down because there are unmet needs, many of which, cross all kinds of differences, reach people in every part of the country, and were undeniable in the experience we all shared going through the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that the notion of being engaged, of taking responsibility for this generation and generations to come is enormously important and encouraging. And one of the things I try to encourage in them is that they look for and think about and reject the false choices that so many of our would-be leaders tell us. You know, you don't have to hate the members of another party to be a member in good standing of your own. In the same way, you don't have to hate business to advocate for social and economic justice, or to hate the police to believe Black Lives Matter. But we are sold so many of these kinds of false choices in our current political discourse. And I keep encouraging the young people who want to be involved and who are trying to encourage others of all generations to be engaged, to be alert to those false choices and reject them. Because the fact is, most people aren't buying 100% of what either party is selling. You know that, Major.
Governor, we have less than a minute left. Do you think the business and corporate community in America needs to be more involved in the democracy debate? And if so, how?
I think the business community is becoming more involved, in business leaders in the democracy debate. The question of where they stand as an entity on any given issue, any given policy, is another story. And that's more delicate, I think, for businesses. But the question about whether participatory democracy is a thing to celebrate and encourage, and where it is suppressed or frustrated or encumbered to be called out and condemned, I think that's something that business leaders have to show leadership on, because that involves all of us. And the truth is,
Governor,
capitalism depends on democracy.
Former Governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, thanks so much for your time. We will be right back. To better understand the pulse of Republican politics at the moment, we spoke earlier with a group of voters who would support former President Trump if he ran again in 2024. We began our conversation with the Justice Department's intensifying investigation into the former president for allegedly mishandling classified information.
It appears to be politically motivated, but there's no way to be sure because we don't work for the FBI. We don't work for the Biden administration.
They're not going to leave him alone. So even if he has done something wrong, they'll always be trying to go after him for something, and it'll be the focus.
I believe that if it really was about documents, that it could have been handled between the lawyers as it had been being handled. You don't raid the home of a former president like he's the drug dealer down the street with the lights and the guys with the guns, and it wasn't necessary. Can I trust that what they say that they so supposedly found is really found? I can't. I'll never believe it.
Right. When Senator Lindsey Graham, Joanne, said that if the former president is indicted, there will be riots in the streets. Do you agree with that? And do you feel comfortable with a senator saying something like that?
No, I wish Lindsey Graham had not voiced it that way. I think if he's indicted, there will be a lot of unhappy people, but I do not believe that MAGA Republicans are going to be rioting in the street.
I don't see there being rioting. If there was going to be any rioting in the streets, it would have been when the last election was stolen. It wouldn't be over this issue.
Let me pick up on that, Steve. You just said the last election was stolen. How was it stolen?
I saw the video out of Georgia. They cleared everybody out of the polling place. And as soon as everybody was gone, they pulled suitcases full of ballots out of underneath tables and started processing. And the next morning, the entire outcome was different.
Steve, does it matter to you that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation looked into that and decided itself that there was nothing wrong there?
I have to believe my own two eyes. I watched it happen on video. Yeah, we know video can be doctored today, but I'm not buying it. I'm a pretty bright guy. What I see, I believe. At least half of it.
Does it matter that two U.S. attorneys, both of them appointed by former President Trump, looked into it and did not consider that activity fraudulent? Does that matter to you?
It gives me pause, makes me think more deeply about it. But again, I have to believe what I see.
Mary, do you believe the 2020 election was stolen?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it was stolen, but I believe that it was unfair. People don't know their history then because they don't know how Democrats argued over the 2000 election. Obviously, they said the Supreme Court elected George W. Bush. And then again in 2004, it was the same thing.
To that point, and I don't disagree with you at all, I've covered 2000, I covered 2004. I well remember the instances you described them accurately. But I remember a phrase that my grandmother used to use, which is two wrongs don't make a right. And I wonder how you process that wisdom from my grandmother in this context?
I think two wrongs don't make a right, but I don't think hypocrisy is very flattering as well.
Joanne, about two wrongs don't make a right. I understand that there is a history on both sides. I'm just wondering if you're comfortable and if you have any anxiety about the future of democracy if both sides use that as an excuse against one another and we never get anywhere.
You're absolutely correct. If every side is going to say after they lose, we really didn't lose, then yeah, I mean, elections will become something that nobody's ever going to be happy with.
You just said the question of democracy, but isn't democracy arguing, debating? So if the precedent has been set that you can question elections, I mean, you can question everything in a democracy.
Sure.
So it's getting to somebody like me, who's not a Republican or a Democrat, but I do support Trump. It's getting really old hearing democracy, 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 because what we're doing is part of a democracy. And the way Joe Biden and the Democrats use it as a weapon, the term democracy has become a weapon. And it just means that if you're afraid that Republicans are a threat to democracy, what you're telling me is that you're afraid that Republicans are a threat to your power and your agenda. And so I think we need to go back and have a better understanding of what democracy actually is.
Steve, let me follow up with you. What are your feelings about the upcoming midterms? Do you have confidence in the election results you will see reported either that night or the following days?
No, my confidence in that area has been shaken for a long time.
Mary, can I ask you the same question? How do you feel about the coming midterms and the election results that will be reported?
For the most part, yeah, I'm confident.
Okay. Joanne, how about you?
The Democrat Party has spent a lot of money to prop up what they call MAGA candidates in the upcoming November election. Candidates that they figured once they got there, the Democrat could be. But then the president the other night basically told everyone that we can't have the MAGA Republicans in office at all, because we're going to destroy the country. So I don't know. It concerns me. I thought we were going to do very well in November.
Steve, if I could ask you, if former President Trump were not to declare for 2024, do you have an alternative who is already a favorite of yours?
Ron DeSantis. In fact, I'd love to see a DeSantis-Trump ticket.
Mary, if former President Trump were not to run, do you have an alternate favorite already?
Yeah, definitely Governor DeSantis, but I have family in Florida and I would hate to steal such a great governor from them.
Joanne?
Oh, definitely DeSantis. Ron DeSantis all the way if it can't be Trump.
And Joanne, let me just follow up with you. Why? What is it that's so attractive about Governor DeSantis?
When DeSantis sees an issue, he takes it on. He's not afraid to take on anything, nor is Donald Trump.
Mary, your thoughts about Governor DeSantis?
Well, I think Republican politicians need to pay attention to him and how he governs and how he deals with the press. He goes on offense like we haven't seen except with President Trump.
I appreciate your time, but I want to open the floor if anyone wants to add anything that is still on their minds that I haven't gotten to.
I am a MAGA Republican, and I'm not a threat to anybody. And I just appreciate the fact of being able to say that. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to destroy the democracy. I want this country to be great again. That's what I want. And that's all it means, MAGA, to be great again, make America great again. And that is something that I'd like to see happen, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Well said,
And
Joanne.
thank you for listening to me.
And we'll be back in a moment. Political violence and riots can often be traced back to the rise of online extremism. We spoke earlier with two experts on the problem and its potential solutions. Jared Holt, the Senior Research Manager at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, and Karen Kornblue, the head of the German Marshall Fund's Digital Innovations and Democracy Initiative. We began by asking them to describe the relationship between the internet and democracy.
Tenuous. The internet, in the way that it is monetized in the current age, is through attention. You can get a lot of attention saying crazy stuff, and we're seeing a lot of people do that, frankly. So, as long as the business model of the internet is built around trying to captivate audiences and keep them clicking, reacting, whether that's through rage or diehard support, it's going to be in conflict with democracy, because democracy is not about what gets the most attention. It's supposed to be about, what the best ideas are. How do we compromise? How do we move forward? And this attention-based economy online is incongruent with that mission.
Karen, complete the sentence. Internet's relationship to democracy is?
It's fraught. It's definitely fraught. In the early days of the internet, it offered incredible promise, and it still does. All of these movements, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, were able to gain steam online, and that it just continues to offer the kind of promise of educating people, informing them, connecting them. But these algorithms really have contributed to the crisis we're in. And the platforms have a real responsibility to fix them and to help fix the problem that they've helped create.
Jared, from a libertarian perspective, one might argue, look, people are out there. They decide what they want to consume. There is agency, as you indicated. So the internet isn't the problem. These people are out there. They have their beliefs, and they're going to pursue it. Or is it that you're arguing the internet is an accelerator and a multiplier?
It's an accelerator and a multiplier. This kind of content, conspiratorial content, extremist movements have existed in America for as long as America has been around, right? These platforms are designed, guiding people towards more extreme content, what they're not taking down, what they're giving a free pass to, people who are using these platforms to manipulate audiences and guide them and steer them.
From your perspective, is January 6th and its magnitude impossible without this multiplier accelerationist effect?
It's very safe to say that it wouldn't have happened the way that it did, at the scale that it did, coming together as fast as it did without the internet. A lot of attention was paid to fringe platforms like Parler after the riot, but a lot of the agitation and calls to action were happening on mainstream platforms from mainstream figures.
For those on the right who say, you're missing this whole point. The point is we get canceled, we get deplatformed, and that's big tech silencing us. So our rights are the ones being trampled, you would say?
This is the danger of the whack-a-mole solution. Not only is it ineffective, too little, too late, but it also raises all kinds of free expression concerns because it takes down content, it takes down people after the fact. I'd love to see the platforms not only fix their algorithms, but when they publish their terms of service, really commit themselves to enforce what they've put out there and not have so much discretion. It's this kind of discretion that I think really bothers people and makes them feel that they can't get on these very few opportunities for speech.
Jared, what happened in these places you were describing, Parler, Getter, other parts of the web that maybe aren't as well trafficked as others after the Mar-a-Lago execution of a search warrant?
These spaces online, pro-Trump forums, fringe platforms, just really erupted with violent rhetoric. These false beliefs that the FBI or law enforcement is out to get conservatives and Trump supporters specifically. But we saw that paired with also a lot of violent rhetoric, taking their existing beliefs that the system's compromised and ratcheting it up to the next level, saying, we need to do something, whether that's protesting or whether that's taking it as far as that individual in Cincinnati did, trying to breach the FBI office there.
Karen, what could Congress do?
There's bipartisan concern, but there's really not bipartisan action. The proposals on algorithmic accountability, I think, offer real promise, but so far they don't include any kind of enforcement mechanism. Given the tinderbox that we're in, I think we really have to turn to the platforms and ask them to step up.
What are you looking at in terms of these realities? They're not going to change before the midterm elections, and multiplier effects, accelerationist effect on the web heading toward the midterms.
There are two urgent things that I would say that the platforms could do. First, they should stop siloing people, directing people into these bubbles that reinforce extremist worldviews and don't let in opposing viewpoints. And second, they should really work with the providers of important civic information, people like election administration officials, to help them amplify accurate information so that people can be empowered and actually know what's going on.
What does this conversation and these underlying realities mean as America grapples with what appears to be a rise in white nationalism, white supremacy?
The internet has been a really powerful tool for extremist movements in the US. It's been a big accelerant. It's been a big boon. And we've seen consistently on platforms, they all have kind of red lines that content is not supposed to cross over. If it crosses over, if it's, particularly violent, particularly racist, that kind of material will get banned. But the content that walks right up to that line, that sort of tiptoes on that line, is among the highest performing content on these websites. It's not a level playing field. And that unlevel playing field has been, definitely an accelerant of these issues that we're seeing rise up in American prominence. The kind of stuff that we're talking about today, whether it's misinformation, conspiracy theories, et cetera, everybody is vulnerable to this. Rich people, poor people, smart people, not so smart people, everybody can fall victim to this stuff. And it has to do with the manipulative nature of the content. And I just think it's really important to stress that.
We will be right back. Well, that's it for us today. We thank you so much for watching. Margaret will be back next week for Face the Nation. I'm Major Garrett.